Hello, this is the Accounting 101 statewide synchronous seminar. Week 1, I really wanted to just spend a few minutes tonight and introduce you around the class to make sure you understand where you need to go, what you need to do to be successful in this class. I'm showing that I have an attendee. I can't actually see anyone's name, so if you're here, could you type something out for me in the chat box and tell me you're here? Okay. Okay, I want to just do a quick overview for this evening, and I will post this in my class and also send it to central office to be posted for all students to look at. The first thing you would want to do is to go ahead and log into your Blackboard course. Once you log into the course, you should be able to find your Accounting 101 02 section course. Enter that course. We'll be doing these webinars weekly starting at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. They typically will last about an hour and a half. This evening's will be much quicker than that. I just want to make sure, as I said, that everyone understands where to find the tools they need to be successful in this course. The place to start for every course is going to be under the Start Here tab. Under Start Here, you will see the selections for your syllabus and calendar. It's always important that you go out and read your syllabus. The course setup asks you to send me an email when you have read, or send your instructor an email when you have read the syllabus. The syllabus is basically the contract with you of telling you, this is what we are requiring from you, and in return what you should expect to receive from us. In my particular course, I have my information, my supervisor, and the online coordinator. You all should have this listed for whatever region your course is out of. You always have the course ID, your catalog description. You will want to read through this. An important component is that you paid for the resources for this course. It's an Include Ed course. Therefore, you will have e-text, and your My Accounting Lab, the homework manager, will be there automatically. You won't have to add any access codes for that. We are using the 10th edition of Financial Accounting by Harrison, Horngren, and Thomas. I wanted to highlight a little bit this academic honesty statement. As I have read through some of the introductions in my particular course, I'm already seeing an awful lot of similarities between some of the posts that makes me wonder if everyone wrote their own post. That should not be occurring. You should be writing your introduction, should be yours entirely. You need to make sure that you do not plagiarize. Plagiarism does not have to be something that you copy from online or directly out of a book. If you plagiarize another student's work, copy another student's work, that is plagiarism. So keep that in mind. If you need some type of disability assistance, make sure that you contact the disabilities coordinator and get that set up. I cannot give you any additional help outside of the normal, like extra time on exams and things, unless you have a documented disability, and I have been notified of that through the correct channels. Make sure, and we'll look at the calendar here in a minute, that you follow the due dates. There are some important components to every course. You must attend course to keep from getting dropped as a no-show withdrawal. For an online course, this means that you must have some graded component of that class completed prior to midnight on Friday, January 23rd, the first 10 days of the 16-week course. This is a requirement. No work, you will be dropped from your class and will not be reinstated. So make sure that you start completing your work, meeting all the due dates, and it's never good to get behind anyway, so you're going to want to meet those deadlines and keep moving ahead. We do not allow late work in this class unless you have received prior approval from your instructor. This means if you have a catastrophic event going on, you need to communicate. So make sure that you always communicate with your instructors regardless of the course, but it's always important. And keep in mind that just because your internet might go down on Sunday at 10 o'clock at night and assignments are due at midnight on Sunday night, that is not an excuse to not have your work in, because you should not be waiting till 10 o'clock at night to start your homework. This class takes more time than that to successfully complete. We say 9 to 12 hours a week. It takes every bit of that. You need to work now to set across some time constraints or some schedules for yourself and make sure that you are successful. Once we're moving through the class, the last date to withdraw will be April 11th. That is an important date for all 16-week classes as well. We talk about the course exams, which will be completed in my accounting lab. They are timed exams. You will feel like the time's not enough often, but they're open book exams, but that does not mean you're not supposed to prepare for the exams. You should always study and prepare ahead of time and be ready to do your work. Okay. Your final exam will be a proctored exam. If you are out of state, you've got to find an approved proctoring site to take this in time for your instructor to get your proctor form to them so that they can have the information in place. The final is worth 250 points. You will not want to miss the final, period. You will want to make sure that you have that scheduled and all the information to your instructor so that they can get that form to the proper location. The class is worth a total of 1,000 points, and it is based on a 10-point scale, so 900 to 1,000 points will be an A in this course, 800 to 899 a B, etc., right down the line. Okay. Yeah. And if you are in the Richmond class, out of Richmond, then the disabilities coordinator is Pamela Rosenberger's. If you need to contact her, you can do that. And that would be a brief overview of your syllabus. A syllabus for a class is something you should keep. So if you want to save it as an electronic version so that you always have it, so that later down the road, if you go to transfer to another college or something, you can show what the content in the course was if it's not a direct transfer, so that you can get all the credit transferred that you deserve to transfer. Okay. Close out of that. I'm going to go back to the syllabus calendar link and look at the calendar. So you can open a printable version of this. I highly suggest everyone prints a version of their calendar. Keep it in a handy place. Mark off as you complete your assignments so you don't miss anything. Again, this is going to be for my particular section of the class, and I have my due dates being on Sunday except for the introduction, which is due on a Thursday, this first Thursday on 1/15. I want your introductions in because I want to make sure everybody's getting started in the course. And then the other thing that you need to remember is that your instructor may have different due dates. The assignments are all the same, but you may have different due dates in your courses. They could, for instance, have your assignments due on a Saturday or have your assignments due on a Tuesday. So you just need to look at your course calendar and refer to that and meet those deadlines. So as I said, for session 1, some instructors may have that set to not be due for a full week. Other instructors might want it in 3 days. You've just got to pay attention to your calendar, and that's what your due dates are. Okay, and again, there's no excuse for not getting your work done in a timely manner because your resources are all here. You have your book and your My Accounting Lab. If we want to go and look at the course sessions, actually, if I go to course sessions, it tells me for session 1, which on my calendar says is due by the 18th, it tells us to read through these activities here. We're supposed to look at the getting started announcements. We're supposed to do the learning activities, which tells us, this is where it tells us in section 1, that the course syllabus and course calendar are located in Start here. Please send a message to me that you have read this. Well, you know, I need to fix this because I asked you all to send me emails, not messages, right? So that's something I'll go out and edit, but I would like an email instead of a message. So let me fix that right now. Some instructors prefer messages and some prefer emails. You have to see on the syllabus what it says and then do that. Okay, fixed. You do have an e-text with this. You can register for that e-text by clicking on this button here through the e-text. I'm not sure if I've already done this or not. Yeah, it looks like I have already opened it, so when I click the button, my textbook opens. So I'm able to search my textbook, whatever I need to do. Read my textbook, search my textbook, get the information I need. The other component that we do is we do our homework in My Accounting Lab. Once we're down in this first section, we can actually click right on our due chapter homework right here, and it should take us right into it. If you need to do a registration, it will take you to that, and you just complete the registration you need. So for instance, if we were going to start our Chapter 1 homework, we would click on Chapter 1 exercises here and click on the first problem. And I would then answer these questions. Now, mind you, I should not be able to answer these questions until I have read the chapter and maybe look through the PowerPoint, and I will post a Chapter 1 video that you can watch as well. But because I know some of this, you know, I'm going to say, oh, well, I know that accounts receivables is an asset, right? If I'm stuck on something here and I'm just not sure, or I answer something and I can't get the right answer, I can always choose to ask my instructor. This button will actually pop up a box that lets you send an email directly to me. It comes to my email. I can click right on a link that will be in that email and answer your question very quickly. Always ask a question. Don't just send me a ask my instructor and I pop up to a page, but yet I don't know what your question is, so I should know where you're stuck and why you're stuck when you use Ask My Instructor. If I click on some of these others, I will have the option to use Help Me Solve This. So if I just flat out can't figure it out at all, I can use Help Me Solve It, and it will work me through step by step. I can try to answer it. If I don't get the right answer, I can just put in anything actually and say check answer, and it's going to say nope, that's not right. I can just keep doing my check answer, and it will provide me with the answers, and I can read about it, and then I can go back and try to do my actual assignment. So the Help Me Solve It is also a useful component. It is not available on all of the aspects such as quizzes, but it is available in your practice exercises. You can always choose to, after I've attempted my problems, and if I can try them 3 times, and if I still don't have them right, I can choose a similar problem and improve my grade by doing that. Like I say, it just is time consuming, but you need to practice until you understand why. Again, if you use the Help Me Solve It and you get the correct answer, but you really don't understand why you get the correct answer, then that's when I need for you to ask a question, a pointed question as to, what concept are we talking about that makes that be the correct answer, so that when you get to the conceptual quiz questions, you can answer them because then you understand the concept instead of just how to finagle through my accounting lab and get the answers. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about this? If you watch this later and you have questions, then you can email me at that point in time. I can save my work and leave and come back later. Okay. And I can just go back to my actual Blackboard class here. So that was the introduction class session, which is due by Thursday, but that's just basically your introduction that is due. On Chapter 1 or Session 2, that is going to be where it's actually talking about the assignments that due. We've got some lecture notes posted here, which can be helpful. If you use, I needed to show you something else too. In my accounting lab, if I'm in my accounting lab, and I say that, so I'm going to go back here. If I'm in my accounting lab, I can do my chapter homework, my chapter test, I can view my grade book, I can look at the chapter study plan, I can go to the multimedia library. So if I go to this multimedia library, I have many tools available to me as well. So for Chapter 1, I can have my Chapter 1, click my Select All, do Find. Here I have several little videos I can watch that will help understanding. They're short and sweet. They don't take long to play. Here's an example of one. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but Accounting Principles and Concepts. So that's just an example of one of them. We have these basic transaction demo docs are great. The interactive flashcards to help you learn your terminology, those work really well. And here we have the Chapter 1 PowerPoint. If you want to go through the PowerPoint just to make sure that you're getting the highlights of the chapter. Okay. That's a really quick overview. I'm sure you will have more questions as you go along. Chapter 1 basically is going to talk to you about, let me go back to the PowerPoint real quick. So Chapter 1 is going to talk with you about what is accounting, and accounting is the language of business. It's important that all businesses converse in the same language, use the same terminology so we understand each other. Accounting is actually the information system of where we gather the data into reports, we measure business activities, we communicate these results to the business owners and to outside entities. Basically, people use this information to make decisions, right? The business transaction actually occurs. Something happened that it has an economic difference on the business. I buy inventory on account, meaning I owe the company I buy it from. I owe my vendor for that inventory. Or I sell merchandise on account, meaning I have an accounts receivable for the business now and I have less inventory. And then the companies then report their end results. Different sectors of people use accounting information. Individuals, investors and creditors are interested in that. Securities and Exchange Commission, Internal Revenue Service, all these folks want to know how our money's being done. And then nonprofits also have to report financial information because they use grants. Therefore, the state government may issue those grants, or not necessarily the IRS. We still have to file our reports, our 990s with the IRS, but lots of times we're working off of funds which are grants, meaning you get X amount of dollars and then we're spending up to that amount of dollars. So instead of earning revenue, we know how much our net income is, being not our net, but our gross, being the amount of the grant, and then our expenses come back out of that amount. There's two kinds of accounting, financial accounting and managerial accounting. Financial accounting is used for decision makers outside of the company, like investors, creditors, government agencies, and the public. Financial information or managerial accounting is information for managers. We create budgets, we do forecasts, we have projections of what we're going to do within the company. There are different types of business organizations. If you take Business 101, you talk about these. Proprietorship, one owner, one person is liable. Partnerships is two or more owners, and each one is personally liable. If you have an LLC, you have members, and these members are not personally liable for the company's expenses. And then if you have a corporation, you have several stockholders, and stockholders are not personally liable. So you have protection from the debts of the business if you are an LLC or a corporation. When we organize a business, again, we choose between the 3 different or 4 different types, and there's different reasons to choose different types. Those are listed clearly in the book, and they are listed clearly on the slides here if you want to read through the PowerPoint slides. Often you hear that corporations are double taxed, which would be a disadvantage. I would tell you that means that the company is taxed on their net income, and then the shareholders are taxed on their dividend income. So the same dollars, because dividends are a distribution of the net income of the company, so the same dollars are basically taxed twice. So there's lots of concepts, assumptions, principles that underlie accounting. You need to have an understanding of these well enough to learn the concepts that are going on. That's as far as the principles. You need to understand enough to be able to know why we record transactions the way we do. So we want to talk a little bit about GAAP, or Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. This is a professional framework for measurement and disclosure of financial information. The Financial Accounting Standards Boards, or FASB, formulates GAAP. They come up with the rules that you follow under GAAP. So we have some major objectives. So the accounting objective is to provide financial information about reporting entity that is useful to existing and potential investors, lenders, and other creditors in making decisions about providing resources to the entity. Watch for that. You will see that pop up as a question on quizzes, tests, perhaps even the final. I mean, what is the primary objective of accounting? We need to use information that is relevant, and that includes materiality. With materiality mean, does it make a difference to the decision maker? For example, if I'm a company who has $1,000 revenue, then $100 is probably material. But if I have $1 million in revenue, then $100 isn't material at all. It's not going to make a difference to an investor, for instance, or if a bank will loan me money, that $100 isn't going to make a difference. So it would not be material to the larger company. We must have faithful representation. We want to make sure that we are reporting good, solid information. Information is to be comparable, meaning I need to make sure that I report my revenue that matches my expenses for each month, so that so I can actually compare January of this year to January of next year. It must be verifiable. There must be some source document. How much does my invoice say? How much does my sales receipt say to show why I'm recording that dollar amount? It must be timely, which again goes along with reporting it in the proper period. And it must be understandable. The understandability does not mean that every Tom, Dick, and Harry that we might find out on the street would understand our financial statements, but understandability means that for anyone who takes the time to try to learn to understand them, it is understandable. There are constraints to good financial reporting. You must have the benefit should always outweigh the cost. In the accounting world, you just don't do things if it costs more than the benefit. And then we follow the financial reporting standards. So I basically talked through all of this when I was just going through these. Again, this is a really good reference for you to look through. So we have to have some assumptions in place. We make the assumption of the entity assumption. The organization stands apart from other organizations and individuals as a separate economic unit. So if you're an individual who owns a small business, you should have a separate checking account, and you should keep separate financial records for your business than you do for your personal expenses. Continuity, the going concern assumption, we just assume until there's something that tells us it's not true, we assume that that business is going to continue for as long as we need it to continue. Now, if you've been notified that a company is going to be foreclosed upon or something like that, then our going concern assumption can go away. Historical cost principle, we record our assets at whatever we pay for them. So you might have an appraised cost, a fair market value cost, and what you actually paid, and you record it at the price you actually paid. It's historical cost. That amount is verifiable. We have a sales receipt or that shows us what we actually paid. Stable monetary unit, we assume we do not fluctuate our income statements based on the fluctuation of the value of the dollar. We just report it at the dollar value, and that's where it stays. There are also international financial standards or IFRS that are most likely going to be put into place for any company that does business outside of the United States as well as in the United States. And you can read through that. As we start to move forward through the first 3 chapters, we look at how the financial financial statements fit together, and in order to be able to understand that, we need to understand the accounting equation. Keep in mind that the accounting equation is an equation. Assets equal liabilities plus owner's equity, or if I'm a corporation, the owner's equity is actually stockholders' equity. So it is an equation. So as long as I know one of these three, so if I knew that my assets were 1,000, my liabilities are 600, I can solve. If I didn't know what my owner's equity was, I could determine that they had to be 400 just by solving the equation. And this accounting equation must always equal. It always has to stay in balance. So assets are the economic resources of a business. Those are my cash, accounts receivable, land, building, inventory, office supplies, prepaid insurance, anything, goodwill, let's see, investments, patents, anything like that is an asset. Liabilities are something we owe or outsiders' claims to our assets. So it's what we owe to the bank, what we owe to our vendors, okay? Account or owner's equity is the insider claims. It's the stockholder's interest in the assets. It's our net worth. If we're a personal person, for us, it would be, we would have our income less what we owe, and then our assets less what we owe, and that's our net worth personally. So that would be our owner's equity. Okay, and this is just looking at the gap, which was the company shown, and they're showing us what this company's liabilities and assets are. We're talking more about how we can manipulate the accounting equation. Assets minus liabilities equals owner's equity. Assets minus owner's equity equals liabilities. When we begin to talk about the stockholders' equity section, we will have paid-in capital, which will be our common stock. And then we will have the retained earnings. So stockholders' equity is actually broken into two parts. Retained earnings is actually the revenues, the cash inflows of what we're in business to do, less the expenses, less any dividends that we've paid out over the entire life of the business. Okay. So revenues increase owner's equity, expenses decrease, and dividends decrease. And those all flow into retained earnings, which are our cumulative earnings over the life of the business less any dividends we have paid out. Okay. And we have some illustrations. For the sake of time, I'm going to just click through these. You can read them. It very clearly explains them. They're in your textbook as well. Okay, and then there's some stop and thinks, and it tells you the answer. So this lets you do some thought processes to see if you're understanding. Financial statements, we have the income statement that answers how well did the company perform during the year. It's revenue minus expenses. The statement of retained earnings tells us how much of their earnings they kept during the year. It's our beginning retained earnings plus our net income minus a net loss minus dividends to get our ending retained earnings. Our financial position is shown on the balance sheet. It shows our assets, liabilities, and owner's equity accounts. And how much cash did the company generate during the year? That would be shown on the statement of cash flows. And we look at our operating cash flows, our investing cash flows, our financing cash flows. And I know this is all just a bunch of terminology to most of you right now, but the more you hear it, the easier it'll be to understand as you read it. If we want to evaluate business operations through the financial statements, we will want to look at the data, how it flows. We start with the income statement. It's always the first statement we prepare. The next statement we prepare is the statement of retained earnings. And then we complete the balance sheet, and then we can do the statement of cash flows. The income statement, you may also see it called the statement of operations or other names that you should be able to figure out that that's their income statement. It reports revenues and gains, revenues and losses, or expenses and losses, and the bottom line is going to be your net income or net loss for the period. Retained earnings, again, it's the portion of the net income reinvested into the business. We have net income increases retained earnings, net losses and dividends decrease. A net income flows to the retained earnings statement, and corporations are not obligated to pay dividends. So lots of people think that people invest in companies just for the dividends they received, and actually that's not typically the reason at all. The reason to invest in a company is the hope that the stock value will raise. The balance sheet measures financial position, so it can also be called a statement of financial position. It reports 3 items: your assets, liabilities, and stockholders' equity, and it is dated as a moment in time. You often hear it referred to as a snapshot in time. So if I were looking at my financial statement for the year end of December, or for the year end of 2014, my balance sheet would say December 31st, 2014. My income statement would say for the year ended December 31st, 2014, as would my cash flow and statement of retained earnings, because they are for a period of time, whereas the balance sheet is for a moment in time or a snapshot in time, a specific date. We also will talk about current assets, current liabilities. Current meaning anything that we are expected to convert to cash or to pay out within 12 months. Current means within 12 months. Okay. Long-term would be anything that has a longer life. So property and equipment gets depreciated. We allocate its life over its cost over its useful life, called depreciation. Intangible assets are items that you can't see, touch, feel, such as a patent or a mailing list or a copyright, that type of item. And there's our current liabilities. As I flip through my slides. And our long-term liabilities, things such as mortgages or a note that we've signed to last longer than a year. Our stockholders' equity, common stock, paid-in capital, retained earnings, treasury stock, accumulated or comprehensive income or loss. Again, terminology, I would tell you the terminology, the learning the account title names is often outside of the rules of accounting. Learning the rules of accounting and then starting to know, okay, what is that account? You know, if I say salaries expense, you need to know that that is an expense account, which is pretty easy to identify. And if I say accounts payable, well, it's a payable, so it's pretty easy to identify that as a liability. But if I say, oh, unearned revenue, you might think, that's income. No, it's not. An unearned revenue means I've already collected the cash, but I have a liability because I owe somebody the work or I owe somebody the product. So it's unearned until I have delivered the product or I have completed the work. The statement of cash flows reports our activities, our regular operating activity, any investing of where we're buying long-term assets, or selling them, and financing of where we're borrowing or paying back funds, or issuing stock, paying dividends, that type of thing. More illustrations. Okay, and then we actually get into down to the nitty-gritty of constructing financial statements. Okay, now I'm showing that I have 2 people here and I absolutely can't see who's here, which is kind of funny. So I don't know if you can see to type me a question or to do a chat, because my screen is not looking like it typically looks. I just popped up my question screen. So I showed 2 folks are here. Can someone type a question? I'd like to know who's here. I think Cassandra's here. Cassandra, are you here and can you hear me? Okay, I think you're there. I think I can hear a TV or something in the background, so I think you must be there, but I can't hear you talking. I'm going to leave the mic open for now in case you can hear me and figure it out. You may have yourself muted. I unmuted you on my end, but you may still be muted on your end. Okay, when we construct the financial statements, we want to go ahead and make sure that we understand which items go on each financial statement. So on the income statement, we put our revenues or our net sales and our expenses. If our revenues exceed our expenses, we have a net income. If our expenses exceed revenues, we have a net loss. On the statement of retained earnings, we would show what we had in our retained earnings to start with, add our net income, subtract our dividends, and then we have our ending net income for the year. We need to do that because we need our updated retained earnings balance to go on the balance sheet. So then on the balance sheet, we are going to report all of these items, the assets, liabilities, and stockholders' equity. Sometimes we will do just a balance sheet and not worry about the classifications, although we would always put those items in balance sheet order or general ledger order. So when we set up a general ledger or our chart of accounts, we're going to list our most liquid assets first. So we would do cash, accounts receivable, maybe it just depends on what we have, prepaid insurance, office supplies, inventory, whatever we consider our most liquid assets. Or liquid meaning convert to cash as quickly as possible. So we're going to report those items. When we do the statement of cash flows, we divide it into activities. The operating activities are what we are actually in business to do business for. So that's going to be, we'll look at our current assets, our current liabilities. We will start with their net income if we're doing the indirect method at least. And we will see how much cash we have in our account. I mean, we're basically looking at where did our cash balance come from. what makes up our cash balance. There's an example of a cash flow. Can the company actually sell its products? These are decisions we want to be able to make by looking at the financial statements. We should be able to tell, can the company sell its products by looking at the sales revenue? Is it going up or down, trending up or down? What are the main income measures to watch for? We want to watch for our gross profit, operating income, and net income. What percentage of sales revenue ends up as a profit? We want to divide our net income by sales revenue to find that out. Can the company collect its receivables? We're going to compare zero increase in revenues, or the 0% increase in revenues to the percent increase in sales. Can the company pay its liabilities? We would look at what are its assets compared to its liabilities, what's its current ratio, and where is the company's cash coming from, and that's where we're going to look at the cash flow statement. We want to make sure that we evaluate business decisions ethically. We will want to look at the economics. We should maximize the economic benefits. We want to make sure everything is legal, and we want to make sure we are making ethical decisions for the company. And that's a race through Chapter 1. I don't want anybody panicking. I'm panicking. I probably should try to enunciate my words. We do have a lot of content in the book. A lot of it is learning the terminology. I firmly believe that listening and hearing the terminology is so helpful. So if you watch the little videos that are in the multimedia library of my accounting lab, if you tune in and hear these lectures, as I try to do them on a weekly basis, and they will be set for an hour and a half, typically the first week of class, and I know that people weren't notified. I just sent out my email tonight quickly. I will post this tonight. I probably won't post it tonight, but I will post this in my actual class this time, but typically they will be in YouTube, and this one will probably end up in YouTube as well. But that happens at the central office level, so I have to get it sent to them. But I will post this so students can see it, and hopefully it's helpful. You can provide me any feedback. It's always really cool to have some of my own students when I'm doing this, because often I'll have a lot of students that are not in my classes, and not that that doesn't add value, but I don't usually get the type of feedback from them as I get from my own students.